So that is how you do a two-parter. That was awesome. But anyway, welcome back everybody to our weekly Moriarty the Patriot discussion video. Today we're going to be talking all about episode 3, The Scarlet Eyes, Act 2. But before we get into the video proper, quick reminder if you haven't done so yet to hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, set notifications to all, let all of AniTube know that you're here. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into this week's video, and we're going to start by talking a bit about the Moriarty family, like the immediate family, and then we'll spend some time talking about the new trio, the new Moriarty family. So we're going to talk about the old Moriarty family to start. And I should start by saying that I do think that this is, like they made this family as despicable as they possibly could, especially the original William. He was a real piece of work, and I kind of, like, I have a lot to say about William as, like, a character, because he's just despicable, but I should start by saying, I think of the Moriarty family, the one that I feel like could have been redeemed if they were given more time, and maybe, like, if they had met somebody earlier. I think the Moriarty Sr. could have been, like, potentially, like, redeemed. Maybe not even redeemed, but, like, could have been better if they had met that one noble woman way earlier. Like, the really sweet one, the nice one who, like, seems really interested in charity. And even then, I don't know if she's actually interested in charity or if she just thinks that that's, like, a noble's duty and maybe she's, like, still rude behind the scenes. I don't know. She doesn't seem like it. She seems like one of the good ones, like Al, even though Al does some pretty dark stuff this week. But still, I feel like Moriarty Sr. could have been the one to do something, like, good as a noble. Like, he seemed like, even though it was driven completely by lust, like, I still feel like maybe if he had met her earlier instead of his, like, current wife, maybe things would be a little bit different, you know? Like, maybe if, like, if he had gone to her, like, if he had left his wife to go with her, although I think that would have caused a stir in noble society, I don't super know. But, like, maybe Al wouldn't have decided to blow the family home up. That might have been the way. I do think, like, just little things that he said here and there made me go, like, well, maybe he could have been a good dude. But at the same time, he does say, like, oh, yeah, the nobles, or the commoners do smell, and you're right. Like, we shouldn't be talking about this at the table. It's disgusting. You're right. I'm sorry. And it's like, ugh, what an asshole. The mom, there's almost nothing to say, right? The Moriarty matriarch is sort of just like, you stock, like, noble woman who's snooty and rude and looks down on others. Nothing much to say there, but really the big one is the original William Moriarty, as we know him in the past. And he is a little psycho. I can see him becoming, like, a Jack the Ripper type of character if they hadn't put a stop to that where they did. The whole, like, fork thing. This character had, like, an obsession with forks, both in the first act and now the second act. He seems to, like, use these forks as, like, a tool. You know what I mean? Like, he stabbed the maid in Act 1, and now he spills the tea, but not in the fun way, on the carpet, and tries to get Lou to lick it up. And I'm like, don't tell my boy Lou, like, to lick up stuff off the carpet with his tongue. What's the matter with you? And so that's when, you know, our Will comes in. That's how we'll separate them, William and Will. Will walks in, and William says, like, oh, like you're going to defend your younger brother. I didn't know you commoners had such feelings of responsibility. And it's like, ugh, this friggin' kid. But yeah, then he tries to get Will to stab Lou with the fork. So, like, the fork is this, like, running motif. He even dies with a fork in his hand. And so, like, I feel like it's the fork because, and this could be way off base, but y'all know me, I like reading into things way too much. I feel like the fork is maybe like a metaphor for a silver spoon, you know, like where you're born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You don't know, like meaning, and that's like a turn of phrase to mean like you don't have any concerns. You're so wealthy that like not much would concern you. And we do see that he tried to pin theft on Will and Lou by like hiding a bunch of silver forks and spoons in their cupboard, right? So I do think like the silver fork might be a nod to the silver spoon, but since you can't exactly stab somebody with a spoon, at least it'd be very difficult. The fork made more sense. They could have done a knife too. Now that I think about it, a silver knife, but like a silver fork is a little bit closer to a spoon than a knife is. So that's my best guess. It's honestly a miracle that Al turned out as good as he did. Like Albert does have this sense of like equality to him, like, you know what I mean? Like he doesn't like the status thing with noble society. He thinks it's gross and he wants to abolish this. Even as a noble, he feels like the nobles aren't exactly being quite noble, you know what I mean? And so like him slowly spiraling into despair, watching his family like just not even become monsters, but realize that they've always been monsters. And like seeing the effect that has on him, and like a lot of these like really insane shots of like him sort of like internalizing, and like you see like the background disappear, and he's sort of internalizing his own anger towards not only the Moriarty family, his own family, but also towards like noble society as a whole. It's very interesting. Albert as a character ended up walking away as probably the character I'm the most intrigued by. Don't get me wrong, y'all know I'm a big Moriarty guy. I love Sherlock stories, so obviously I'm here for OG Moriarty, you know, like I'm here for William James Moriarty. But Albert definitely comes across as like incredibly fascinating. I think in order it would be Will, Al, Lou. Although Lou is also a good boy, but I'm just saying, like Albert walked away as very intriguing by the end of the Scarlet Eyes. And yeah, I love the fact that he literally chooses to abandon his family for his found family because his real family were a bunch of assholes. And that is almost like the best way I can put it, is that the trio are a found family, you know? Like, especially by the end. Like, in the beginning, like, we almost, when we start the episode, you can almost see the connection that will eventually become. Like, when Al says, like, come live with me. And, like, Lou is holding the knife behind Al's back. And Will is like, huh? Like, Will's like, okay, this took a turn that I wasn't expecting. And I love that. Like, I really like that you can see just immediately, as soon as the episode picks up, right from where last week left off, right back in the church, you can already see the road that these three are going to walk down. And it's super, super intriguing. I think Albert, like, very quickly becomes the, like, de facto big brother for Lou and Will. Now, Will is clearly, like, the leader of the trio, right? Will is the brains and the commanding officer, I guess we'll say, of the trio. But it is Al serving as sort of this big brother, like, mentor, I will take care of you type of role. And whereas, like, Lou is the dependable youngest of the three, where, like, Lou is the one who might get kind of, like, stuck with the dirty job, but he's willing to do it because, like, he cares, and he is reliable and dependable. And you do see, like, this sort of kinship, forming between the three of them, and I really, really loved it. Especially when, like, they first show up at the estate, and Simon... What happened to Simon, by the way? Like, did Simon also die in the fire? But yeah, Simon, like, acts, like, really cold to Lou and Will by saying, like, you guys will have to walk through the back door. Otherwise, you will track filthy marks all over the estate. And Al's like, hey, they're family now. You don't get to talk to them like that. And, like, Simon's like, you know what I mean? Simon gets all angry about it. And I do think it's interesting, too, that they don't, like, immediately become family. I'm just saying that you can see the connections, right? Because Lou does say, like, I don't know what Al's intentions are, and I'm confused, right? Because Lou is still suffering from a lot of, like, internal health problems. I'm not super clear what they were, but it was enough that it would give him some sort of, like, attack at night. Like, he would feel, like, some sort of sharp pain that he knew would subside, but he just needed Will to kind of hold his hand and be there through it. whatever it was, Moriarty Sr. does pay to have a doctor look at him, and they do fix Lou. So by the time we see Lou in the present, Lewis is fine. So you do see that, like, the Moriartys did help, you know. Like, it was better for them to live there than it was to live at the orphanage. And Lou probably would have died if they didn't go live with the Moriartys. So it is good in the long term. But yeah, as I said, Lou does question Albert's, you know, intent with them, right? He's like, why did they even bring us here? Like, I don't understand what he wants, right? And Will says it doesn't really matter what he wants, because we're pretty much using them too, right? Like, implying like they literally healed you. So like we're using them too. We need their status, we need their power. But at the same time, I think I know what Albert wants. You know what I mean? Like Will saying like our goals align. that's why we start to form this relationship, because their goals align, right? Like that's why the trio begin to take shape. It starts with a similar goal in mind, but by the end, especially when little Lou presses like the piece of lumber to his face and like burns the side of his face, like oof. Especially then, and he even says like, I did that because like there's no way they're gonna listen to like 3 kids who escaped unharmed. Like there's no shot. Like one of us has to have been hurt. So that's, you know, that it is what it is. And like you see both Al and Will reach out for Lou, and Lou takes both of their hands, and then the trio leave. And when they see the firemen, Lou says like, or Albert says, I'm Albert Moriarty. These are my brothers, like William and Lewis. And it's like, oh shit. And they do put the original Will in the original William in Will's bed, which is like, oh, that's so clever. So like they made it look like the original William died, so our will take over his place. And even in this episode, we see that like there is a confusion between the 2 different wills, right? Like commoners think that our will is the William Moriarty, like the noble one. So like you can see like how it's already starting to like, you can see it start to take shape. And Al stabbing Will was one of the craziest things I've seen, but also like, yeah, screw that kid. You can basically say that they're like a family forged in fire. You know, like they were different pieces, but they are now one single unit. They are a family now. They are the Moriartys. You know, like Al kills his original brother Will. Lou burns his friggin' face. Will seemingly gives up his original identity to become William Moriarty. Like they all give up something, you know, like they all like, all of them have a traumatic event that they go through, although Will's is a little bit less, but like they all go through something to get to this eventual end goal where they are a family and they are taking over like the Moriarty name, and maybe turning it into something better. Although by the time Sherlock gets involved, I think Sherlock would argue that they turned the Moriarty name into something somehow worse. Even though I doubt Sherlock really stands for this noble crap too. I think he's just working in the system. We'll see. I'm very excited to see whenever Sherlock actually enters the scene. I want to see Sherlock and Watson at some point soon. I also want to see Sebastian Moran as well, because Sebastian Moran and you know, Moriarty, don't freaking question me, but it better be a ship because it's always been a ship. But we'll see. We'll see. But with that said, everybody, that is going to wrap up my thoughts here. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to boop that up snoot, share if you care, leave a comment down below, and make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell, set notifications to all, let all of AniTube know that you're here. And of course, before we go, I have to give a big thank you to the good folks in the T Squadron. Look at these beautiful people. Look at all these beautiful names, and hey, if you'd like to join these beautiful people, there are now 2 ways to do so. The first is by hitting that Patreon link in the description, and the second option, for just a wee bit more, is by hitting that join button right beside the sub button to get a badge next to your name, some emotes to spam in the comments, and of course, your name scrolling past the screen here. So if that sounds cool to you, go ahead and hit that join button, or hit that Patreon link. Either way, it is super appreciated. So once again, a big thank you to the T Squadron, and that's it for me. So until next time, you stay classy, AniTube, and wash your dang hands.